I never expected to stand before an alien queen, let alone one whose presence could silence a battlefield. But fate has a strange way of pulling an ordinary human into the heart of an empire he never meant to influence. My name is Elias Warren, a mechanic from Earth, a nobody really, until the day the Vyrna Empire abducted me by mistake. Or so I believed. Beginning the summons. The journey began when a Vyrnan war cruiser entered our solar system, without warning. They weren't here for Earth. They were chasing a rogue faction. But in their sweep, a scout ship found me repairing a satellite relay. They assumed I was operating a communication weapon. One beam of light later, I found myself drifting into unconsciousness as shimmering armor surrounded me. When I woke, I was restrained to an examination bed, bright lights overhead, and voices clicking in a language that wasn't mine. But the moment their translator probes synced with English, everything became painfully real. Human, the tall, violet-skinned commander said, "You'll be brought to the Empress for questioning regarding your device." My device? That was a busted satellite. I protested. They didn't care. The Vyrnans didn't exactly trust humans. They saw us as unpredictable, reckless, too emotional. And so I was dragged, literally dragged, through a metallic corridor toward a set of grand, shimmering doors. On the other side waited the most powerful being in their empire. And she wanted to speak to me personally. The throne of silver flame. The throne room of Queen Sailera was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It didn't look like a hall of war, nor a place of cold judgment. Instead, luminescent threads flowed along the walls, shifting in patterns that resembled living constellations. The air hummed with an energy I felt in my bones. Then I saw her, the alien queen. She sat upon a throne carved from something that looked halfway between crystal and flame. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, her hair falling around her shoulders in strands of glowing white, and her eyes looked ancient, older than Earth, older than human history. And they were fixed on me. "Bring the human forward," she commanded, her voice smooth but edged like a blade. I was pushed to my knees before her, but she lifted a hand. "No. He stands." My heart thudded. She rose, descending the steps of her throne with the grace of someone who'd ruled for decades. When she stopped an arm's length away, I felt small, not because she towered over me, but because she radiated a presence I couldn't describe. It was sovereignty, power, patience, and pain, all wrapped into one being. She studied me silently, as if peeling back the layers of my mind without a word. "You are different from the others of your kind," she finally said. I snorted, nervous. "I'm literally just a mechanic." That made her frown, not in anger, but confusion. "You joke while in the presence of an empress?" "I joke when I'm terrified," I admitted. Something flickered across her expression. Curiosity. She walked around me, circling like a scientist examining a strange new specimen. "Human Elias," she said softly, "our intelligence reports that your species is volatile, self-destructive, quick to violence. And yet," she stopped behind me, "you did not resist when taken." "That's because resisting would have been stupid," I muttered. "You guys have laser swords and floating tanks. I have a wrench." A sound, barely audible, came from her. A breath. A suppressed laugh. And the guards stared at her in shock. The alien queen had reacted to a human joke, but her amusement faded quickly, replaced by something more serious. "You were brought here," she said, "because I have questions no Vyrnan could answer for me. Only you can." My stomach tightened. "What kind of questions?" She turned slowly until her luminous gaze locked onto mine. The kind that determine whether our empires will coexist, or one will fall. Middle, the questioning. I was taken to a quiet chamber, not a prison cell, not an interrogation room. Something else. It resembled a star observatory. Transparent walls revealed the galaxy outside, planets glowing in the distance. Floating lanterns hovered around the chamber, casting soft blue light. Queen Sailera entered alone, dismissing her guards. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a floating circular seat. I sat awkwardly. She remained standing. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, "Human, tell me, what drives your species toward conflict?" I blinked. "That's your question?" Her expression remained unreadable. "One of them." I took a slow breath. "How do you even answer that? Humans are complicated." "That is precisely why I ask." She moved closer, her silver skin glowing faintly. "In the last 100 cycles," she continued, "our sensors have observed your species destroying its own ecosystems, fighting among itself, wasting potential." Her eyes softened. "And yet your species also dreams, creates, sacrifices, loves fiercely." A pause. "How can one race be both so wondrous and so destructive?" I stared at her. This alien queen, a ruler feared by half the galaxy, was asking me the kind of question philosophers struggle with for centuries. "Sailera," I said before catching myself. I had spoken her name without a title. She did not reprimand me. Instead, she whispered, "Yes, Elias?" I swallowed. "Humans fight because they're afraid." Her brows lifted. "Afraid of what?" "Of not being enough," I answered. "Of losing. Of being forgotten. Of not mattering." I exhaled shakily. Humans don't start wars because they're strong. They start them because they're insecure. She grew still. I continued. "But the same fear that makes us violent also makes us protective. Brave. Loyal." I met her gaze fully. When a human chooses peace, it isn't because we have no reason to fight. It's because we choose something stronger than fear. She stared at me as though no one had spoken to her this honestly in decades. "And what is that something?" she asked quietly. "Hope," I said. "We survive because we believe tomorrow can still be better than today." The chamber fell silent. Her chest rose and fell slowly, as though she were absorbing every syllable. Then she asked the question that would change everything. "Elias." Her voice softened to a whisper. "Can your species be trusted?" The answer that left her breathless. Her question pierced the silence like a blade. It wasn't political. It wasn't strategic. It was personal. I didn't answer right away. I didn't rush to defend my entire species. Instead, I considered what it meant that she, a queen, would ask a human this. Finally, I said, "No." Her eyes widened. She stepped closer, close enough that I felt the warmth radiating from her glowing skin. "No," she echoed softly. "Then why should I not end your species now, before you destroy more than yourselves?" I took a slow breath and stood up, surprising her. We were only inches apart. "You shouldn't trust humans," I repeated, "because trust is earned, not claimed." Her lips parted slightly. "But you can trust me." A flicker of light rippled across her body, a biological response, I later learned, equivalent to a gasp. She whispered, "Why you?" "Because I'm standing here alone, unarmed, and still telling you the truth," I said. "If I wanted to lie to survive, I would have told you everything you wanted to hear." I placed a hand gently on my chest. "But I believe humans can grow. We can learn. We can be better than our past. And if you give us a chance, if you give me a chance, I'll prove it." Her breathing hitched. For the first time, the alien queen looked uncertain, shaken not by fear, but by hope. You would take responsibility for your entire species? She whispered. No, I said softly. I'll take responsibility for my choices. That's all any human can promise. She stared at me, stunned. Slowly, impossibly, her silver eyes shimmered, a glow spreading across her cheeks. It wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't anger. It was awe. You are unlike any human I have studied, she breathed. And you, I said gently, are far more human than you think. Her breath caught in her throat. For a queen whose emotions were tightly controlled for decades, this moment broke every rule she'd lived by. She touched her fingers lightly to her chest, the violinen gesture of emotional resonance. You have given me an answer I never expected, she murmured, and it has left me. She inhaled, as if searching for a word. Breathless. Ending. The first step of peace. The next day, everything changed. Queen Sailera summoned her council and declared that humanity would be offered dialogue instead of surveillance, cooperation instead of suspicion. The generals resisted. The ministers argued. But the queen stood firm. This human, she said, pointing to me, has shown more truth in a single conversation than our intelligence network has uncovered in 50 years. Some of the counselors glared at me. Others looked intrigued. One hissed, "You trust him?" She answered without hesitation, "I trust his honesty." Those words rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. From that day forward, I wasn't held as a prisoner. I became an intermediary, a bridge. The queen often requested my presence, not for interrogation, but for discussion, about humans, about her people, about what peace really meant. Over time, the conversations shifted. Her tone softened. Her posture relaxed. And sometimes, just sometimes, she smiled. One evening, as we stood on a balcony overlooking her empire, she said, "Elias, do you regret telling me the truth?" "No," I said. "Do you regret listening?" She turned to me, her silver-white hair dancing in the breeze. "Not once." We stood there for a long time, watching distant stars shimmer above us. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quiet. "When I first met you, I feared humanity's chaos," she admitted. "But now," she looked at me with those luminous eyes, "I see your species the way you described it, full of fear, yes, but also full of hope." "And hope," I said softly, "can change everything." She nodded. "It already has." Epilogue: The Breath of a Queen. In the months that followed, diplomatic channels opened between Earth and the Vyrna Empire. Treaties were drafted. Cultural exchanges began. History shifted. And the Queen? She kept me close, not as a servant, not as an advisor, but as something more meaningful. One night, standing beneath a sky filled with alien constellations, she whispered, "You once left me breathless, Elias." She brushed her fingers lightly against mine. "And you still do." I didn't know what the future held. Not for Earth. Not for her empire. Not even for us. But for the first time since being dragged aboard a Vyrnan warship, I felt something stronger than fear. Hope. And just like I told her that night, hope changes everything.